So, as I said, just want to go through with a set like this. There is more than one correct way of writing it. It depends how it's interpreted. See? So the obvious way for me would be to say, okay, so x belongs to, x is less than, greater than, equal to both ends, and then I put -5 and -1, and we say x has to be an integer. Okay? So, remember, stop writing at the moment, just pay attention, just listen and talk. You can write it down afterwards. You can't do both, you see, you can't learn while you're writing. Do we understand where that comes from?
Yes.
Okay, so x is between -5 and -1 inclusive. Do you understand why that is?
Yes.
Okay.
5 and 1 there.
Yeah, -5 and -1 at either end. So we're just looking at this number and this number. So that's the limits. It's and equal to because they're in that. Why have I had to write integers?
Because of the decimals.
There's no decimals. It's specifically whole numbers. Okay. So that makes sense to everyone. Yeah?
Yeah.
No questions. Right. What though if I wrote this? X belongs to, right? And I said X has to be, tell you what, I'll make sure I write it the correct way around for you. Makes sense. So I'm going to say X has to be greater than -5. Just that. Right, so I'm going to say -5. Just going to write that bit. Not going to put the upper limit on it. Right? But if I do that, I have to do something here. Different. Because obviously there is an upper limit, but I've not written it. But I can express it in a different way. Any ideas? Rational. Well, the trouble is, if I write just rational, there's lots of decimals. Real numbers would include lots of things. You know the answer. You can tell me if you can explain it.
If I can explain why.
Yeah.
What was the answer?
Well, she's going to tell us if she can explain it. What's the answer?
Well, it's gonna be z, but with a negative because one is like the first negative one number, or like negative numbers spot negative.
Do you understand where that comes from? Because that means x has to be greater than -5. Now, how many numbers are greater than -5? So -5, -4, -3, -2, -1. But that on its own would say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. However, if we stick at the end here, well, actually, x is only allowed to be negative integers. That means we have to stop at -1. We can't have 0 because it's not a negative integer. Make sense?
Yeah.
So both of those are correct. They would both get me that list of numbers. Okay? So if you wrote either one, you would be right. Now, could I write? Don't write down. Just one more. What if I wrote this? That's actually my bad. This is. Yours are no worse than mine, believe me. Okay, what if I were to write x and I were to write -6 and 0, and x is now an integer? What do I do here and here?
Same thing, but just not equal to x is less than. Wait, did you put a line through this? So you can put 6.
So if I do that, it's not including -6, it's not including 0. So if I put integers, actually the only ones again I'm allowed? -5, and so on. So actually I've got 3 options that would be correct. Which one would we choose as the most efficient, effective one to use?
The last one, the first one.
I would say not the last one. Either of the other two are fine, aren't they? Yeah, actually, this second one is probably the most efficient because it uses less things. But the first one is probably what you'll likely see. Easiest to interpret, easiest to understand. Makes any questions on that? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you put the line on the C, does it matter if it's on the inside or the outside?
No, I'm just trying to fit it in however I draw the Z.
Ooh, squiggles.
And yeah, my brackets go wrong just like yours do. As long as you're making an attempt.
Mine look a little bit atrocious. I really